And aloha! Welcome to the BlueNote Fan Report. I'm Guy, the Hawaii Blues fan, and this is your show that is by a fan, for the fan, and you got to know about you, the fan. And when I say that, I absolutely mean it. And today, I have a guest that I know is a fan favorite. My guest works with St. Louis Blues BlueNote production. You see her on the pregame lives. You see her on postgames. You see her in interviews. This is the one and only, the person that needs no introduction, Miss Ashali Vise. Ashley, welcome to the BlueNote Fan Report.
Thanks so much for having me. How are you?
I am absolutely doing wonderful. It's not as beautiful as everybody thinks it is today, and it's not. I mean, it's 65 today, which is like a cold day, but I know you guys are going, bastard.
Yeah, I think it's about 5 degrees here, so I would definitely trade weather with you, but that's okay.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people would. Well, first of all, I got to thank you very much for allowing me to interview on the show. I appreciate you taking time out. Let's start with, where you're from and how you got into sports journalism, basically.
Yeah, so I'm actually from Dallas, Texas, which a lot of Blues fans don't know. I'm okay with Blues fans knowing that, but I obviously don't broadcast that, especially with the rivalry that the Blues and Stars have built here over the last few seasons. But I grew up, I've always really enjoyed sports, went to all sorts of sporting events growing up, whether it was, a few Stars games, but a lot of Dallas Mavericks games. Always been a very big college football fan as well. I knew going into college that I wanted to try to go into sports journalism. Had to kind of get over the hump and the thought in my mind that it was going to be too hard to do, because I specifically remember going in and having a few people tell me, that's really competitive industry. Are you sure you want to go into that? But ended up going to the University of Arkansas and studying broadcast journalism there. And whenever I was there, just tried to do as much sports focused on camera work as I possibly could. Of course, in your classes, they want you covering more news related things whenever you are a broadcast journalism student. So I just tried to, give a sports angle to any story that I could. And then I also interned in the sports department of a news station for 2 years while I was there. So like I said, it was the University of Arkansas. So the Razorbacks is the name of the team. So I would go with the news station to the Razorback football games on Saturdays and help them with their production. And here we are. It's all worked out.
Yeah, I was saying, you're a Razorback. So there's another rivalry. Arkansas and Missouri have had a bit of a tussle there for a little bit.
Yeah, that's actually growing more and more. Whenever I forget the exact year that Mizzou entered the SEC. It's whenever I was already in college. I want to say it was maybe after my sophomore year. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because I remember thinking, they're not going to last in the SEC. They're not going to be anything. And then next thing you know, they beat Arkansas the majority of the time. Arkansas basketball did beat Mizzou on Saturday, which I was excited about. But it's definitely interesting. Everyone in St. Louis, not everyone, but there are a ton of Mizzou fans here in St. Louis. A ton of my colleagues went to Mizzou. So it's another fun rivalry for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you put yourself in the middle of a couple really good rivalries. And being from Dallas, Texas, isn't as bad as Panger being a Blackhawk. And we fell in love with Panger, so, right?
That is very true. If you can get over that hurdle, you can get over anything, right?
Absolutely. He's probably, and I called him the most beloved Blackhawk in St. Louis Blues land.
I think that's true for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Well, so you're doing your internship, and you ended up getting one with the St. Louis Blues, if I remember correctly. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how that came about?
Yeah. So I actually, after I graduated, I got connected with Chris Kerber. I was really just looking for the best way to get my foot in the door in the industry whenever I graduated. I was interviewing with some local news stations that were in smaller markets. I believe one was Evansville, Indiana. One was in the Iowa City area. And I just didn't know if going the local news route was what was going to be best for me. I thought that's the route that I wanted to go. And then as I was interviewing, I didn't quite know for sure if that's still the path I wanted to take, especially with how much the digital realm is growing as far as putting out shows digitally and growing your personality digitally. So the idea of working for a team directly really interested me. And I was connected with Chris Kerber, and he connected me with their digital department. He at the time was actually pretty much the head of their digital department and the head of content. And so I interviewed with him, and he got to know me a little bit, and then he brought me in for the beginning of the 2016-17 season. So I had a dual role. I was the digital intern, and then I also had a role on game nights where I worked for the NHL, and they just paid you by the game, and you went and you would get photos and videos of fans throughout the arena. You would get photos of Blues fans, but also photos of the opposing team's fans, and send them to their social media crew. That way the opposing teams also had content. So for a season, I was the intern, and I had that game night role. And so I was writing stories for the Blues website. I was shooting and editing some video whenever the video department, BlueNote Productions, needed some assistance. And then by the end of it, I was actually doing a little bit of on-camera work, which was great because that's what I always wanted to do. But can't thank the Blues enough for, letting me experiment. And looking back, how green I was, and I was probably not ready to be put on camera by the Blues at all. Yeah. But I'm really thankful that they gave me the opportunity.
Oh yeah, I mean, I started this show in 2018, the beginning of the 18-19 season, and I've gone back, and that's just 2 years ago, and I've gone back and watched some of my originals shows, and I go, oh my God, was I bad? So I get
it's crazy.
I get it. Yeah, it takes a little bit to understand what you're doing when you're doing this, and I really get that, and I can understand. Now, see, I went to the Vegas game the first time the Blues played Vegas, and with Vegas being an expansion team that year, they did not want to really focus on the opposing team's fans at all. I mean, they did nothing. The only thing they did, because I went right after the Vegas shootings, and a couple of people had Vegas Strong on their back, put that on the back of their shirts, and they showed them. So that was it. The fact that the Blues have constantly connected to fans from both teams, I love that. And can you tell us a little more how that was like when you were interacting with the fans from other teams? Because I know that St. Louis has always been an area that attracts fans to their games.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely fun. I mean, to be able to walk up, whenever this was more for the league. It was for the NHL and for the other team more than it was for like the Blues content. But it's fun to approach people that are fans of the visiting team because they don't expect it. So they get really excited to show off their opposing team's jersey and do things like that. So that was fun for sure.
Yeah, I was one of the games that I went to, and it had been a couple of years since I'd been to a game, was in 2014. I went to the day after Thanksgiving game against Edmonton and had some Edmonton Oilers fans around me and sitting with me. And it was fun to jostle with them during the game. And it was a game that Tarasenko won in overtime, so I got to do the final rhythm.
I was going to say, that's not what year was that? I'm wondering if that was the year the Tarasenko fight against Edmonton. I feel like that was around Thanksgiving.
I think that was a little later than that. This was 2000. This was Thanksgiving 2014.
I think 14. Okay, yeah, I'm thinking more like 2017, 2018.
Yeah, that was when the Tarasenko fight was. He got his Gordie Howe hat trick.
Gordie Howe hat trick. Yep.
Right.
Yeah, great game.
Yeah, he's an amazing player. And now that we're talking about him, let's talk about you and your interactions with him. So when you're talking to him, I know that English is a tough language for him, and he's the famous "what's a rub off" mean, and that kind of shut him down a little bit. How do you draw his personality out when he's shut down a little bit like that?
I think with him in particular, with all players, but especially the ones who do struggle with English, their biggest fear is just they don't want to look stupid. That's their big, they don't want to look dumb. And so I think that this comes with any player, any coach, anything, but trust is the biggest thing, right? So the first time you interview someone, you might find that, the answers are really short, or they're a little, standoffish, or they just don't want to do it. But the more they see your face, the more you talk to them, the more you ask about, take an interest in their personal life, the easier that becomes. So I think that once they trust you and they trust that you aren't going to try to make them look bad, once you get over that hurdle, I think that's really how you get someone to open up and get someone to enjoy being around you and enjoy the conversation that you're having. And then anytime someone has English as a second language, I personally talk really fast. So my biggest thing has just been learning to slow down and make it as easy on them as possible, which honestly, his English is not bad at all. He's a great communicator. There's really no one who's a big struggle from that standpoint.
Yeah.
I think just trust is the biggest thing. As long as they know that, you're going to be patient with them and you're not trying to trick them and ask them something that they aren't going to understand. I think that's all it takes, really.
Yeah, no, I get that. I know when the first interview, or actually the second interview I ever did, well, a little bit after that, but the second major interview I ever did was Grant Fuhr.
Okay.
And, I'm absolutely completely nervous. And you could tell there was a little, at the beginning, a little bit of a trust issue, but as we went along, you could feel him opening up and talking to me more and telling me more of his story. So I completely understand that. When it's a win, it's absolutely easy to talk to these guys. But after a tough loss like the 1-0 to Arizona, what would be some of the questions or what would be some advice that you would use to get these guys to talk or to let the emotions flow correctly? I guess the right word would be. What are some techniques you might use?
Something I've learned, and I will say, so I would love to do post-game interviews. I unfortunately don't do a ton of post-game interviews. Of course, Darren Pang does those live on Fox Sports Midwest. I typically talk to them the next day or before the next game, so they've had a little bit of time to cool off by the time I get to them. But I've learned that if you have to talk to them about something negative, they know that you can't sugarcoat everything, right? They don't want you to be faking it either. But I think the more thoughtful your question can be, the better the answer is going to be. And that's something that I've particularly this season tried to focus on more. I think in the past, I kind of just asked easy questions. I kind of would try to lead them with the question maybe if I thought it was going to be a sensitive subject. But I think if you can, ask them a more thoughtful question and it's not something that they hear all the time. Like, how upset are you that you lost? Well, obviously they're going to be upset that they lost, right? So you might not get a great answer. But if you can find a point in the game that, you thought really made a difference and you can ask them about that and ask them how that impacted the rest of the series. Or, I like to ask them particularly about their mindset and about the mental strength of the locker room. Because, they're used to talking about, the X's and O's and what they need to do to rebound and, we can't take this many penalties and you're going to hear that stuff all the time. But, professional athletes have a much better, they have a skill that a lot of us don't have, and that's that they can leave things behind. So I always find it interesting to try to ask them in order to get in their heads, how do you stay confident and move on? What's the message, what's being said in the locker room that helps you move on? How do you turn the frustration into motivation when the rest of us that aren't professional athletes, normally whenever we get frustrated, we just crumble. Well, they can be a lot mentally tougher in those high pressure situations. So I would say just thinking of questions that are a little bit more, not necessarily outside the box, but something that they don't hear every single day. Because I can say too, this is nothing against any media members, but if you sit in the media scrums all day, you hear the same questions for, 82 games if it's a normal season. Yeah. So I think that's the biggest thing.
I'm absolutely with you there. And I know we talked a little bit beforehand, and I told you one of the questions that I was thinking of, and I was kind of thinking, well, maybe she's going to say that that's a bad question. But now hearing you, that was probably a good way to ask that question.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
And so when you're doing, I want to get into game day productions, right? Okay. I know that game day productions don't start on game day. They start after the last game, basically. So can you kind of run us how you prepare yourself for each game, or for how a game's coming up, what you're doing mentally, what you're doing, what's going on, what's happening with your team and all of that, what your process is?
Okay, so I also do a lot of shooting and editing. So when it comes to preparing for a home game, I have a lot to think of from that perspective of what's needed in the arena for the following game. But as far as reporting and hosting, like you said, it definitely starts beforehand. I found that the prep work is a lot easier when you really pay attention to trends as they're happening, if that makes sense. So whenever you're watching a game, you're noticing the things that are going wrong. You're noticing the things that are going great. And you're also noticing things that you might not see on a stat sheet. Like, for example, like Oscar Sundqvist is a guy that you watch and he might have nothing on the stat sheet at the end of the night, but he hustled the entire game, right? So just because someone isn't on the stat sheet doesn't mean that they can't be a topic of conversation the next game. So I think that is a big key, is really paying attention to the game, not just who scored and who had an assist and who had a save, because anyone can talk about that, 2 days later. Anyone can say, oh, this guy had 2 goals. What was he doing right? So those kind of things, paying attention to what's happening during the game beyond just the goals, more or less. Listening to, like you said, the post-game sound, the post-game, what they have to say, how they're feeling, what their mood is like. Because, sometimes you can tell that a loss, they kind of are just like, it happens sometimes. That game didn't go our way, whatever. And then sometimes you can tell that they are very upset that one didn't go their way and they think that it should have gone their way, or they're very frustrated by their performance, things of that nature. So I think listening to what they have to say, and then also as the next 2 days go on, kind of as you talk to them, gauging how their mental state is progressing. Like, are they still hung up on last game? Have they let it go yet? Are they preparing for the next team? And then the morning of games, it definitely is a lot of looking at stats, from other teams, looking at who we're playing, looking at, the tedious things, like you might not, you wouldn't know if you don't have someone who's looked up the stats for you, how many third period leads the team is given up or things of that nature. So I would say that's kind of how it goes into it. It's always paying attention, and then it's also always paying attention to what's happening around the league, for sure. Because if you're always paying attention, then it's not as surprising when a team comes in. This season, it's a little bit easier because you're only playing 6 other teams the entire season. But normally, whenever you're playing the rest of the league, it's a lot easier to prep whenever, you've already seen the headlines, you've already seen who had the incredible goal 2 nights before. It kind of helps you pay attention to the trends.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you, and I do, believe it or not, I do a lot of the same thing. I don't just watch the Blues, I watch, NHL Network religiously. I'm watching other games. I'm keeping my thought process open so you can see other things. And I'm glad you brought up Oscar Sundqvist. Yesterday's game, the game against Phoenix, the 1-0 loss. Yeah. He wasn't on any stat sheet, but he played the best game of the season that I think he's played all year. And my group that I host, we have a pick'em contest, and my pick to click was Sundqvist, and everyone's going, Sundqvist. And he didn't get on the score sheet, but he had a great game. Those are fun games to watch. Do you enjoy talking to a player like that to say, hey, I know you didn't get on the score sheet, but wow, you really had a good game out there. You were all over the place. Does that help you perk up the player too?
Yeah, it does for sure. I will say hockey is a different challenge than some other sports. This isn't a knock on any other athletes by any means, but it's ingrained in the hockey culture not to talk about yourself and not to talk about how great you are. So it's very hard to talk to a person about how well they're performing without them just turning around and immediately just giving credit to their line mates and giving credit to their goaltender and giving credit to the rest of their team. Yeah. So I would say, as much as, yes, it is good to perk them up that way, but it's even more fun to talk to his teammate about him, because they like to talk about their teammates more than they like to talk about themselves, if that makes sense. So it's almost even, more fun to see the reaction. If Sonny doesn't get on the score sheet, his line mate might not expect you to ask about him. So whenever you ask about him, his line mate's excited to talk about him, if that makes sense. And when it comes to Oscar Sundqvist, he is, I think there's a lot of people on the roster that would peg him as one of the most effective players on the team, night in and night out. Craig Berube as well. I think he's definitely an engine for the team. And if you don't follow the team a lot, you might not quite understand that, but it's also been that way. I would say it's been that way for at least the last 2 seasons. His first season with us, Mike Yeo was still the head coach, and Mike Yeo played him a lot, and he didn't do much. And I even didn't, I don't think I recognized the potential that he had and what a difference he could make in the lineup. And then the year of the cup run, you started to see, oh, he makes a big difference, and he's very loved around the locker room as well.
Yeah, the Mike Yeo. I'm not going to talk bad about Mike Yeo. I liked him as a coach. I thought he got it. I didn't like the way he came in as a coach in waiting. To me, those never work, and that was just the knock on the system, not him. But when Coach Berube came in, he seemed to focus on the blue collar guys like him, Sundquist, Sanford, Blaze a little bit now, and Kyrou now, and that. So those are the guys that it's kind of nice to see get the recognition that they normally don't get.
Yeah, it is nice to see that. And I think, like I said, Mike Yeo played Oscar Sundquist often. So I definitely think that he had a radar for that. I can't really speak as to why things did or didn't work out. I think, the team played great for Mike Yeo whenever he first took over. So I think that anytime you make a coaching change, I think it's pretty common to see the team rally behind the new coach. Seems to be a strategy that is used to light a fire under the team when it feels like there's no other option. It seems like just around the league, it seems to be the way the NHL operates a little bit. But there's no doubt that the guys love playing for Chief. There's really no denying that. It's the respect they have for him and the fact that they play for him night in and night out really is pretty incredible.
Yeah, I have different views. I have a couple different views on Coach Berube. There's times that I absolutely love him, times that I absolutely don't. But for the most part, the way these guys do play for him, it's a neat thing to watch and to think that, you get to watch this every day and you see it from behind the scenes, and that's got to be even more exciting. What are some of the things behind the scenes that the fans don't get to see that you think would be interesting for the fans?
That is a really good question. I mean, I think that something that you certainly see, something that I don't know that the fans see is how much better this team performs whenever they are loose and whenever they're having fun. Of course, it's hard for any team to always play that way, right? Like it's whenever you lose a couple games, it's hard to not, tense up and not, where you start to sense frustration. But you're dating back to the cup run. You can tell whenever people are having fun, joking around in the locker room before the game, joking around getting onto the bus on the way to the rink. Normally on the bus rides, it's pretty quiet and pretty serious, but you just get a sense that whenever this team is having fun, that's when they're doing their best. And I think that sometimes fans think, oh, if a team has lost a couple games, they should just be at the rink practicing. They shouldn't be, joking around on social media. They shouldn't be posting this funny video. And I just don't necessarily agree with that because I've seen firsthand how much better the team performs whenever they're just having fun with it.
I am so on board with what you just said, and I'm so glad you talked about it. You know what one of my favorite things you guys show is? It's when they're playing soccer or the little ball that they're kicking around outside the arena before the game.
Two-touch soccer, they play before every game. Yep.
Yeah, when you guys show that, when they're really, really loose and you can just see the smiles on their faces, it's going to be a good game. And I love when you guys show that, when you guys are able to show them, getting together in their groups and things like that. One thing I want to ask you, and this is kind of a tougher question, so I understand if you can't answer it, but during the 18-19 season, there was talk of a locker room riff. A lot of people have not talked about it or whatever, but when you see in the locker room something that's not working, or guys that are upset with each other or something like that, I know that's hard to deal with. So how do you separate that from what you're doing? And I know you never make it personal, but it's always personal. And I get that. So I think you understand where I'm trying to go with this?
Yeah, I do. I will say, quite honestly, I understand that rumors definitely circulate, especially when the team's not playing well. When the team's not playing well, and it's understandable, but everyone on the outside wants to reach for why, right? Whose fault is it? Who's doing this wrong? If it seems like someone has a bad attitude, they think it must come from someone else having a bad attitude. When you look at the Blues compared to some issues that other teams around the league have had, it's actually a pretty incredible group, the way they work together. Like we talked about the respect for Berube. I mean, you're not worried about these guys mouthing off to the coach. You're not worried about any of that. But I will say, if there ever is or has been an issue in the locker room, I think that no one would truly even know outside of that locker room and outside of that coaching staff, because I think this group is big about keeping their issues in the locker room. Like there might be, rumors on social media, rumors amongst fans, but I can tell you that there's not rumors among the Blues front office staff about it. I think that the players on this team, and I think it's because of the leadership that this team has had for the last several years. I can't speak to anything from before I got here, and I've certainly been more involved with the team for probably the last 2 seasons is whenever I've really taken on more of a reporter role and more of where I'm around the guys and building relationships with the guys. But I think because of the leadership, if there are issues, I think that they're handled in the room and that you don't even know about it. So I'm never really having to deal with that or tiptoe around that, because if guys have issues with each other, I would never know.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I can think of, and this happened during the Cup year, was, and I hope I don't get the names wrong, I'm pretty sure it was Bortuzzo and Sundqvist.
No, Sanford. You're talking about the fight. Yep. Yeah. That's something where, that's captured on camera. I believe it was Fox 2 cameras that caught that whenever it happened. I still to this day don't know what the reason for that is, but you also have to understand people want to search for like a big personal reason, like, oh, what was happening between the two of them personally. But what you don't realize is the team was underperforming so badly at that point. They're all so frustrated, not to mention they weren't supposed to be performing that badly. They were Cup favorites going into the season. Maybe not the Cup favorites, but, they were supposed to be serious contenders. So there was so much frustration. I believe Berube had taken over at that point. I don't quite remember, but it's also an emotional thing whenever you go through a coaching change in the locker room. That's not easy. The guys blame themselves. So anyways, you think about all that frustration, and then it's a hard practice. Guys hit each other in practice, they finish checks, they do these things. So just like, even in a game, you might see guys, get in a fight on the ice, but they don't actually hate each other, even if it's opponents. They might fight on the ice, but they might actually be friends off the ice. Like I'm sure Ryan Reeves has fought some people who he doesn't actually dislike, Yeah. So who knows what the reason, if there was a personal reason behind that, but I can also completely see that. I view that as just a breaking point from the team as a whole that ended up bringing them together. And then, next thing you know, they're going from worst to first in the league. So I think that's something people want to read into more. But, locker room fights aren't that, they happen amongst you.
No, I agree with you, right? The one thing about that fight, the only thing that I was concerned about that fight was it was the coaches that broke it up and not the players, and I figured it was a boil over thing, and that's maybe why the players backed off. But
right.
Again, you never know, like you said.
Yeah.
When it gets presented, it's up to the media to control the narrative, and that narrative can quickly spin out if it's not, and I don't want to say controlled, but present. I think present is better, the better word there.
Right, for sure. It's these guys spend a lot of time together also. You spend time with your normal coworkers, but then also you put yourself in a regular season scenario, and the amount of time they're spending in hotels and on planes and then seeing each other in the locker room, and maybe you've been gone from your family for a week and a half, it happens.
Oh, absolutely. My camera only records 30 minutes. I'm used to it. I just keep going.
No, that's okay.
No, but one of the things that I get I'm retired military. I'm retired Navy, and I understand that. I lived with guys 6, 7, 8 months at a time. There's guys that I love to death, but there's times I want to just knock the crap out of them, So I absolutely get that. And I understand the team mentality of hockey probably better than I do any other sport, because it's one of those sports where, yeah, you have your superstars, but they're not. It's not like basketball where one guy's getting 80 points and nobody else is scoring. These guys have to work together, or the superstar doesn't do anything.
Right.
And and I talk about this, like even Gretzky, when he went to LA, he wasn't going alone. He took guys he knew were going to help him.
Right.
So
exactly. No, I agree. It takes the whole team buying in for sure. I think that's why, Braden Shen made a comment, it was a couple weeks ago. It's back whenever the team was on a roll. I think they had won 4 in a row. It was pretty early on, about how, the team, you have Ryan O'Reilly, and of course Tarasenko will be back eventually, but he was saying, we don't have a team with, superstars right now. It's the depth that, and I firmly believe that, a team with depth is equally as effective as a team with, 3 superstars. I mean, you look at Toronto and you kind of see the same thing.
Yeah. Well, we proved it. The Blues proved it in the 18-19 season. If you want to look at the team that had the bigger names, that was Boston. Boston absolutely had the bigger names. Pasternak, Marchand. God, I hate Marchand. You had Chara. I mean, they definitely had the names. Rask.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't, and we showed cohesiveness beats that any day.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree.
So let's get into that season a little bit, because that had to be an interesting season for you behind the scenes. It starts with that drubbing by Winnipeg at home opener, all this, anticipation. And I remember I don't know if you were there. I'm guessing you were at the icebreaker. You have Mr. Blue, Bobby, going, these guys are going to bring me my cup and bring me my parade. These guys are going to get me my parade, was the quote. And then you have that horrible opening to the cup. So go through your process a little bit for that season, what that season meant to you from the highs and the lows. And
yeah, it was incredible looking back on it, especially with how everything changed, less than a year later. It feels almost like it didn't actually even happen. But it was incredible. That was my first season where I really was doing a lot of reporting and hosting. That's the first season that I hosted all of the pregame and intermission reports. Before that, I only did a handful. That was the first season that I was actually interviewing players on camera. I knew the players from my production side of the work, and I was used to shooting things with them and being in the locker room every day and things like that. But that was my first season truly covering the team on camera. So it was a challenge early on because I hadn't covered the team on camera to that extent before. So trying to figure out how to work for a team and present the storylines and to talk to the players whenever I'm not used to doing that yet, I'm not great at it yet, and they're doing bad, is difficult. So that was definitely strange, but I honestly I hardly remember them doing bad. What I remember is like when it turned around and they hit the 11-game win streak at home versus Toronto. And it was like, oh my God. And like, I remember even jokes around the office, like, oh, well, when are we going to be like, we look and, think about, when does the cup final end? Like when are we going to be done with the season? Things like that. People made jokes like, watch us, we were last in the league. And it was like, watch this be the year we win the cup. And like you said, Bobby had that moment where he said that when the players first got there. You have Jordan, like I was in Philadelphia during Jordan Binnington's first start. I think it was January 7th. I don't even remember the bad stuff. I just remember how crazy it felt when things started going right. So from Binnington's first win, I remember I followed him, and his dad was at the game. So I followed him. I followed him with the camera to meet his dad after the game whenever he got the shutout. Like I remember that specifically. I remember whenever they had the 11-game win streak. I remember I always tell people the most nervous I was during the entire season was not in Boston. It was in double overtime versus Dallas. I was a wreck, nervous during that overtime and both overtimes, starting with the first one. And I remember saying to the person next to me in the press box, because I was also on headset with our replay operator, because I was going to have to do an intermission report between every overtime. So I had to contain the emotions and try to stay focused. But I remember my coworker, his name is Austin, he was sitting next to me. And I was like, this would be devastating if we lose this game, with how much with everything this team has gone through, with everything they have turned around, the fact that they are outplaying Dallas so much right now in this entire game. But you had Ben Bishop just playing out of his mind. I was like, if we lose this, it is going to be devastating. Like it's going to happen. I can feel it. It was crazy. I definitely remember the good stuff more than the bad stuff, and just how crazy it felt. Honestly, again, that double overtime versus Dallas stands out to me because I remember even saying to people, and people are superstitious, so they said, don't say that. But when we won that game, I said, we are winning the cup. There's no doubt in my mind that we're winning the cup. There's too many things that have aligned, too crazy. It's too much of a storybook fairy tale ending. Like, if we don't win, I'm not going to believe in anything anymore. So yeah, incredible season. Still can't believe I was so incredibly lucky to be part of it. I don't always travel with the team. I take about half the trips. And I was able to go to all the games in Boston. My boss brought me along, and it was incredible. I was incredibly lucky to be part of it.
Yeah, what the Blues ownership did, bringing all the regular, full-time employees to Boston for Game 7, I thought that was was special. That just showed the cohesiveness of the front office along with the team.
For sure. It was also, we've all bonded for sure that season, no doubt.
There's something from that Game 7 that never gets talked about that for me stands out more than anything else. It's the one goal Dallas scored that shouldn't have counted.
Yep.
Right? And the reason I say that, you remember earlier in that season, it was Bouwmeester hit a puck that hit the referee, took a nice little right-hand turn, or left-hand turn, whatever it is, hit Longo, went in the net, and they said no goal because it went in directly off the referee. Well, in that Dallas game, I think it was Perron passed the puck across, it hit the referee's skate, went directly to the Dallas player who put the puck in the net. To me, I truly don't even remember. Yeah, I'm not going to lie. There were just so many moments, you had the hand pass moment. You had so many things happened. You had the Bozak, did he or didn't he trip in the final. There were so many things that stood out. Like the biggest, I don't even recall that goal. And the main reason is because I just remember, I remember more than that, the Jamie Benn chance in double overtime where I thought he had it for sure. So I don't remember that goal. Right. I don't remember that goal for sure, but I think it's just because so many other, monumental moments are in my mind from the season. For me, the moment that I knew was the hand pass.
Yeah.
To me, I call the hand pass the greatest play in St. Louis Blues history. Because to me, that's the moment that team could have done one of two things. They could have risen or folded. There was no in between there. They were going to do one of the two things. And Coach Berube went into that locker room and said, don't say a word about the hand pass. You just say we're focused on the next game. And coaches go into the locker room, say that all the time, walk out to the podium, and John Tortorella is famous for this and starts complaining about the play he told the players not to talk about. Berube walks out, gets the very first question, and he says, I'm not worried about that. I'm just focused on the next game. To me, that's the moment that changed everything.
I agree. And I think that's what makes Craig Berube such an incredible coach, regardless of what the team is or isn't doing on or off the ice. He tends to not make a big deal out of anything. And he can make you believe that he doesn't think it's a big deal. Whether he does or doesn't, he can make you believe it's not a big deal, and he can make the players believe it's not a big deal. So you could take the biggest thing in the world, and he might say, that doesn't make a difference. Why would I care about that? And you're going to believe him. So I think he I think he has a way with that, and I think that it pays off big time, whether that he doesn't let the team get too high or too low. I mean, even after a massive win, I'm trying to think, there was one this season. I don't even recall. It may have been the Anaheim game. It was an incredible game. They scored 5 or 6 goals, and he was like, yeah, it was a good game. He didn't he doesn't get too high or too low. And I think it allows the team to not get too high and too low. And I think that's very, very important.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that. I remember that game. He came out and says, "Oh, well, yeah, but we could do this thing better, and we could do that thing better." He and I think that's his way of telling the team, "Yeah, don't listen to these guys. Listen to me." Do you get that feeling?
For sure, yeah. Yes, I think he does a very good job of keeping the media narratives out of it. Of course, it's my job to talk about the storylines and to talk about the trends. But the bottom line is that trends don't necessarily win you a cup, right? So we stretch for the things to talk about. We talk about things that fans might find interesting, but it is his job to make sure that all the team is worried about is what he wants them to do. And I think he does a good job of keeping that noise out of it.
Well, one of the things that I enjoy about the Blues and my show, and you heard my opening, is about the fans. And I think the Blues are very much about the fans. And I want to show you something here real quick. I don't know how well you can see this, but can you see the back of my jersey?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yep, I can. Hawaii Blues fan.
Yeah, I unfortunately I couldn't get the end put on there, but this was my 50th birthday gift. My 50th birthday was between the Pittsburgh and the Ranger game in the year they won the Cup. So they had gotten blown out by Pittsburgh, and then they lost to the Rangers on New Year's Eve 3-1. So I had a different jersey that had Hawaii Blues fan, and every time I was at the arena, they had put me on the screen. I have a couple of pictures of me from being on the big screen and that, and I know they do a good job of really getting the fans involved. So, yeah. And I know you're a big part of that. What are some of the things that you would want a fan to know about what the Blues want to know about them?
That's a good question. What would we want to know about the fans? I think that, feedback is always important. Of course, every game you're not going to be able to please everyone. So the department that I work in, they're directing the video board, so deciding what goes up and when. They're kind of deciding the games that are played in game. They're not directly deciding the music, but they're hiring the person that's in charge of the music, things of that nature. So I think what people are quick to tell you what they don't like, but I think knowing what fans like and knowing what makes fans excited, I think that that's the best thing that we can know about them. And knowing whenever they liked something helps us think of other ideas that we could do that are similar, But we for sure miss having fans. I think we love having fans. We're aware that we've always been aware that the atmosphere is what makes our job so fun. But now that there haven't been many fans at all, it makes you fans are even more important than we realized they were. Yeah. So yeah, it's missed for sure. Just, seeing people get excited when they are on the video board, seeing fans excited whenever they win a game, the atmosphere whenever there's a game-winning goal. That's the other, from the Cup run, one of the biggest things that stands out to my entire department, if I could speak on behalf of them, is how engaged and how involved the fans were every single game, that whole playoff run. It was crazy. You might place up on the video board and you might have some, reactions, but, also even my in-arena pregame reports, typically I assume people aren't really paying attention. They're kind of getting their drinks, they're sitting down, whatever. But people would cheer in the middle of me saying something, and I was like, oh gosh, they're actually listening to what I'm saying. So I think fans should know that we want them to get as involved as possible, and we just want them to have a good time.
Well, you just kind of reminded me of something. I was at Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Finals. I did a fly-in, fly-out. I was there for 28 hours just to watch that game.
Nice.
Yeah, I just gotten a brand new job, and my boss was a Blackhawks fan.
Oh no.
He told me to go.
That's
and
funny.
gave me a day off on Friday, or half a day off on Friday, so I could go to the game.
Funny.
And you guys did some of the neatest video introductions for that playoff with Bobby and Brett.
Oh yeah,
Kelly.
we changed that open video every round. Yeah, that's something like a backstory on that. I mean, that's definitely my department. There are other people who physically worked on that. Who someone in our PR department actually wrote the scripts, and then people in the video department shot it, and then another person, one of our senior video editors, edited it, and then it went through many eyes to make sure that it was good. But we didn't know. During the first round, we had a video with just Chaser. And it was like, okay, this is going to be the video. And then it had such a good reaction that as we went further, it was like, okay, so we think we should keep the same concept, but we should change it every round. So that was really fun, just brainstorming what we were going to do for the opens. We had the wristbands. We worked with a company called Pixmob on that. That was fun to be able to, brainstorm and then regroup the next day and say, okay, this worked, this didn't work. I even remember we rearranged the order that we showed the videos in, because like after the first game, it was like, oh, we didn't like that. So you kind of have to rearrange it. But yeah, that I played a very small role in that whole production, but I definitely was, hearing about it and informed about it the whole way. And yeah, that was a lot of fun to brainstorm for sure.
Well, when you mentioned the wristbands, I know we were supposed to turn them in. I flew 4,300 miles. I kept mine. I still have my
That's
wristband.
funny. I think most people probably did. That's okay. I think they were able to recycle them. I truly don't remember the reason for turning them in. They were either just to be reused or recycled. But yeah, I imagine a lot of people have those as keepsakes still.
Yeah, there was no way I wasn't keeping them.
Yeah, I don't blame you. That's okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm really enjoying this, and I don't want to take too much more of your time, but let's talk about your team a little bit, right? I mean, you've mentioned your team a couple of times, and I want to let you talk about, what it takes for your team to make you look as good as they do.
Yeah. So truthfully, there's so much behind the scenes that people aren't aware of, whether it's the stuff that I do or, there's an entire control room making everything happen during the game. So every single thing that's on the video board, like literally every single thing, someone's having to decide what's going on up there. Every song is thought about. You're having to adjust to timing throughout the game. Someone's having to do that and really think on their toes. There's so many camera people throughout a game. They all just do. Blue Note Productions does an incredible job. It's also Blue Note Productions' job to tell stories on the website. So there's a digital team that posts everything, that does all the written stories, but we do the videos that go on there. So a really, really talented group. We're a very, very close-knit group. We're definitely all best friends. There's no question about that. But yeah, I definitely could not do what I do without them, and also without their support, because I think it can be difficult when someone wants to be on camera if that wasn't their original role, right? So I was hired on as a video producer. They knew I had interest in being on camera, so they said, you can be on camera some, this is what you'll do. And then, as I've gotten better, they've allowed me to increase my role and increase my role and increase my role. So, everyone is so supportive, and, it's a lot of work. There's a lot more work than people realize for sure going in behind the scenes for every single game.
Well, I know what that's like, because I do 99% of this by myself.
Yeah.
But every now and then I've had a producer, someone come in and help me. And those are actually, to me, some of my better shows, because I got someone saying, look at the camera, smile,
Right.
think about this, think about that. When
Right.
you're, and I talk about, like we talked about, my technical difficulty happened because I have so much to remember.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, you've mentioned our pregame live show. So again, normally that would be in arena, but we switched it to our digital channels because there aren't as many fans in the game or in the arena. So that, even just for that, it's myself and Joey, but the vice president of Blue Note Productions, who's the head of the whole operation, he's actually running everything from his computer, running all the videos, cutting back and forth from people, and like flying up the questions. But then also our social media coordinator, who's been so fantastic. Like, she doesn't have to help necessarily the video, aspect of it, but she's pulling the fan questions and picking the fan questions and helping with all of that and making sure that that all goes off smoothly. So everything you see is a team effort, without a doubt.
Now, if I remember right, you're talking about Elsie Butler.
Yeah, Elise. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Elise.
Elise
Okay.
is great. Yeah.
Here's a little story about Elise, and I hope she sees this. When I
Okay.
first started my show, I didn't know who she was. And
Okay.
she had put a thing out about having a dog, bringing dogs to the rink. At that time, this was the 18-19 season. And I had just started my segment called Fan of the Game, and I had made her fan of the game for that one
That's funny.
segment. And I didn't know who she was. So I'm going to ask you a question offline when we're done later. But God, this is so much fun, Ashley. And I know you're busy, and I don't want to take too much more of your time. But I hope this isn't the last time you're on with me. When we get, so I know there's some 5-day breaks coming. Maybe we can get on and talk some little more, because I want to learn more. And I think I'll tell you what, the people that I've told I'm talking to you want to know more about Blue Note Productions. I'm absolutely, because I hear it from them. Right? Oh, I like this. Yeah, and not trying to talk myself up, but they say, oh, I wish they would do something like you do on your show, or this or that. And I really love the interaction that you have with the players. And I remember one, and I think you'd had, it was Colton Parayko and somebody else, Hungry Hippos.
Oh, yes. I think Carly actually did that.
Carly did that, yeah.
Yeah, I set up the cameras and stuff down there, but I think Carly actually, we had her in that room primarily because whenever that we did that on content day, and you never know if the players are really going to get into what you're doing. So she's very, very funny. So we had her in there to kind of help keep it light. Yeah, well, I just, that's one of them that popped to me, and I enjoy those. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Well, I got to say thank you so much. But what I do want to do, I know you just started a YouTube channel recently, and I do post my work there. Yeah, I didn't mean it to be a YouTube channel, but I do post some of my work to try to keep my reels and everything up to date, so I can kind of monitor my progress. Oh, no, and you know, I kind of do the same thing. I like to go back and look at the older videos to see where I'm at, and I get reminded that all the time. Dude, go look at your old stuff, see how you're getting, right? You know, it's helpful, right? Yep. Right? Yep, it is, for sure. Last question, and I got to make it a tough one. Okay. Who's your most favorite player? Okay. To interview, and I won't ask you your least favorite on the Blues, but I'll ask you your least favorite from another team. That's a good question. Favorite player to interview? I think it kind of depends. I think that, like, to have fun with, Oscar Sundqvist is great. He's always willing to have fun, and he's great. I think also David Perron is a very good interview because I feel like he gives honest and thought out answers. He's not going to speak in as many cliches as you're used to hearing, and if he thinks that your question is stupid, he won't say that it's stupid, but, you know, he'll tell you why he disagrees with, you know, where you're going with it. So I think he's interesting. I don't think I can name a least favorite from anywhere. I mean, something I think about not liking players on other teams is that a lot of times you'd still like to have them on your team, right? Like, you know, people might hate Matthew Tkachuk around the league, but any team's going to be happy if they have a Matthew Tkachuk on their team. So that one's a little tougher. Okay. Then I'll remodify it a little bit. One horror story about an interview or something that just went horribly wrong that we never know about, or we never saw, or you know, it got edited twice or got left on the cutting room floor or something like that. Yeah, so that's, you know, anything that's happened like that, I would say is actually more of my fault. I remember the first live show I did, I completely froze the second the camera came on me. I think it was 2017. And I was not a pregame host at that point. Chris Ravy was the we alternated pregame hosts, just different figures around St. Louis. Chris Ravy was the host that game. And I think he got sick. It was like 2 p.m. And I had told my boss, I had said I would like to, you know, be considered to do those sometimes. And he was like, well, have you ever done live stuff? And I was like, yeah, in college I did live stuff, you know, but these shows, I don't know if people know that there's no prompter, we don't use teleprompter or anything. It's all just, you know, winging it. Not, you prepare for it, but, you know, you're not reading, you're not anything. And I froze the second I was, you know, talking about my open, and the second we have a little monitor so that we can see what's on the screen, what's being shown. That way we can keep up with highlights and all of that. And the second I saw that it was me, I was with Terry Yake. He was my co-host that game. And the second I saw it was me, I just froze. I froze, and I actually laughed because I was like, I don't even know what to do. I just laughed, and my boss was in my ear. He was like, you're okay, you're fine. Like, just, you know, just, you're fine. Just say something, please. And I got through it. It was not a good show. It was terrible, terrible show. But that's probably my biggest horror story. And I think at that point, the Blues easily, again, it was a while before I did another show.
Yeah.
I think the Blues easily could have said she's never doing that again. But I'm definitely thankful that they've given me opportunity to come and be comfortable. And now I'm pretty comfortable in all situations. So.
Yeah, when you first see that red light go on, I mean,
yeah.
I can, you know, I remember when I first had Grant Fuhrer, I did my opening 17 times.
Oh my goodness.
I was so nervous. And this was after the interview that I did my opening. I was so nervous after it. I just couldn't do it. I was like, oh my God, this is going to be so bad.
It's difficult. Yeah, I think sometimes people that are watching don't know that whenever you freeze, it's difficult. It's like you know, nothing comes out the way you mean for it to. But with experience, that all, you know, gets a little bit easier and gets better. And I'm always nervous still. I'm always nervous right before. But, you know, I can at least handle it now. I don't have complete meltdowns anymore, I don't think.
Well, no. Well, you should have seen me today. I was, you know, I've been up. I got up at 4:30 this morning because I was so nervous about doing this with you.
Oh, no,
so,
don't be nervous.
No,
Nothing to be nervous about.
I think I'm doing okay.
You are. You're doing great.
Right. So, God, I love talking to you. It's so great. I want to thank you so much for taking this time. You know, I know when a lot of people see this, they say, oh, he's just a fan. But when you guys do this, you give me some legitimacy. And I appreciate that. And I know in some circles, my name's getting around and I'm hoping in good ways. But I really appreciate that you guys take the time to just say hello.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. Yeah, anytime.
Well, guys, I want to give you a huge, huge round of applause for Ashali Vise. Ashali, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the BlueNote Fan Report, and I can't wait to talk to you again. Aloha,
Thanks
Ashali.
so much. Aloha.